Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly think they can do what they want, when they want, and nobody matters. And in this episode, oh boy, guys, a Karen calls the cops on someone because in her eyes, they're too darn ugly to be in public. Ain't that something? Guys, get ready to shake your heads, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this happened a few years back at my old place of employment, but sometimes it just resurfaces in my head and makes me laugh because it's so absurd. I used to work in fast food service as a manager for nearly a decade, so I have a mountain of Karen stories. Now, this is nowhere near the worst Karen I've had to deal with, but I think she's by far one of my favorites, despite being relatively mild. The woman wasn't outright rude, she was incredibly condescending and entitled. This was also during the pandemic, so while we were already incredibly short-staffed, we were also training new staff. So mistakes were going to happen. Our dining room had just opened back up to full service rather than just takeout, so it was added chaos on top of that. On that day, I was stretched thin between trying to help the new employee up front and trying to help the drive-thru coordinator. She was bagging orders and handing them out. She wasn't new, but it wasn't a spot she was in often. While being an easy spot, it was fast-paced. At a point where I wasn't there to help, she accidentally slipped a sandwich for a different order into the bag for a customer that she was helping at the window. She recognized the mistake afterwards, and the sandwich maker had to remake it. No big deal. So I asked the employee if the customer got the wrong order or just an extra sandwich on top of their food as well. And she confirmed that she just slipped in an extra sandwich by mistake, but that person still received the rest of her order correctly. As long as everyone receives what they pay for, it's fine. Free food isn't something to complain about so long as your order's correct. Or so you'd think. When people call the store, I always make a mental note of caller ID. So when the phone rang, I read the name and answered. I basically say, "Thank you for calling store name, how may I?" And that's when Karen interrupts me and says, "Yeah, I need a manager right now. This is urgent." I say to Karen, "I'm the manager, how can I?" The woman doesn't even let me talk. She says, "So here's the problem. I got a sandwich that I didn't order in my bag." Me, realizing it's the situation from before, say, "Oh, yes, we're so sorry about that. We accidentally slipped an extra sandwich in your bag. You can keep..." And that's when the woman interrupts me again and says, "Well, I didn't ask for an extra sandwich in my bag." I say to her, "Oh, I'm sorry, was everything else in your bag correct, or were you missing something?" Karen replies, "I got everything else, just the sandwich I didn't ask for." I say to her, "Yeah, we've had a mix-up at the window and accidentally added someone else's sandwich. You weren't charged for the sandwich. Mistakes happen. I apologize." That's when Karen tells me, "I know. I have the receipt. I'm not calling to complain about the free sandwich." I'm curious at this point, and I say, "Okay, so was there an issue otherwise?" Karen says, "Yes, I wanted to tell you guys that you do not know what you're doing. What kind of a restaurant are you? And if I had the corporate number, I would call them and file a complaint because they are losing money." Now, I loved when people threaten to call corporate because corporate doesn't actually intervene. They just escalate the issue directly back to the store to deal with it, which was me at the time. Since their beef was with the store, it was better to be resolved at store level, rather than having some bigwig who's never even touched a fryer basket step in. It's always ended up as a slap in the face to Karen and a waste of their time. I say to her, "Well, I'd be more than happy to give you the corporate number." When I say that, Karen takes a long pause and she says, No, I'm not gonna waste my time. You guys have absolutely no clue what you're doing. You are useless employees. Just know that I will not be coming back." I just tell her, "Perfect, have a nice day." The woman then hangs up and I went back to what I was doing. About an hour later, the phone rings and it's her name again on the caller ID. So I answer the phone and say, "Thank you for calling restaurant. How may I help you?" Karen says, "Hi, I was there for a pickup order about an hour ago and my ground beef was missing. So I was wondering if you didn't have it in stock or maybe one of your employees just happened to not pay attention and forgot it." Me, realizing her beef wasn't with us this time, say, "Ma'am, who are you trying to call?" Karen says the name of the local grocery store in a loud, extremely condescending tone, spacing out every syllable. I just mock her tone and say, "Well, this is McDonald's." She called me a very inappropriate name and hung up. I took one more call that day from a much more vile Karen, and decided I was done with answering phone calls. Oh man, people just love to complain about every little thing they can. And the fact that this woman called to complain about an extra sandwich in her bag, calling everyone useless, like I don't even know what to say, just eat the sandwich, Karen, like 99% of people out there would have. And this person comments, she has no friends or social life outside her home because she drove them all away with her lovely personality that she doesn't know how to cope with it. So she has to harass people all day. I've met plenty of them. Yelling at people gives meaning to their otherwise meaningless existence. They spend more time on the phone complaining about literally nothing than they do being productive in any way whatsoever because that's the only way they can feel superior to others. Which is kind of sad, guys. Like, some of these people just need a nice glass of wine and a good friend to talk to. This happened about 2 years ago outside of a Five Guys. Now, if anyone knows Five Guys, their stuff is expensive. And for those who don't know what Five Guys is, it's a burger joint. There was a homeless man outside begging for money. The guy had no shirt, absolutely demolished sweatpants, no shoes or socks, and unfortunately he looked absolutely filthy. I had my 2-year-old son with me, and all I could think of was if my son was to ever be in a position like that. As we finished our food and we were walking out of Five Guys, the older gentleman was sitting on the bench outside the restaurant talking to himself. Before I could even say anything to him, he asked me if I could give him some money. I told him I didn't have any cash, but I could buy him food. Mind you, that I thought this was a perfect lesson for my son, and a great experience of helping someone in need. The man just looks at me, and he doesn't even hesitate before saying, "Get me 2 double patty burgers with bacon, a large fry, and 2 chocolate milkshakes." And man, I just froze. After like a 5-second pause, I say, "I got you on a burger, a fry, and a large drink." The guy also paused, and it's like he thought about kicking my ass, and he said, "All right." So I turned around, explained to my son what we're doing, and he asked me questions. After $23 and a 20-minute wait, I had the food, and I gave it to the funny guy. And if I remember correctly, he did say thank you, but it wasn't, "I didn't ask for this" sort of thank you. In conclusion, I was sort of bothered by this experience, but never stopped helping someone in need when I could. Matter of fact, every time I have, I feel like I receive tenfold. Yeah, you know, sometimes it does suck, guys. Like when you help someone and they get all picky about it, it just leaves a sour taste in your mouth. But good on OP for not letting that one literal choosing beggar ruin it for the others. This person shares their experience and says, "Different but similar. I had a cart half full waiting in line. It was a longer line, and people had carts as it was a common payday and just before Thanksgiving. When I was next, a lady came up to me with one item, and she asked if she could be next. I reluctantly agreed since it was one item, you know? The line of people did not seem to mind that. She then calls her teen kid over with a cart overflowing with stuff. A mountain in the main basket, and underneath was very full too. It's a wonder the kid could push it all. Of course, I said no way, and I start putting my stuff on the belt. The woman then starts arguing and then yelling that I promised her to go next, and that it's hard being a single mom, blah blah blah. And then she had the audacity to yell that I'd better be paying for all of her stuff because I lied to her, and quote, made her baby's life harder for having to actually wait in the line. And the thing is, the woman had a full high-end Thanksgiving feast in the cart. She had a huge turkey, plus ham, plus all the usual sides, plus pickles, cheese, crackers, fancy meat, shrimp, all that high-end stuff that high-end people like to have at their parties, plus wine, chocolates, and desserts. It would have fed 20 people at least, so no way I'm gonna pay for any of that. And here's the kicker. After all that single mom guilt tripping, join the club, her husband comes in while I'm unloading my stuff, wondering why she's so upset. The cashier let him know exactly what happened, and he was mortified. He took the child out to wait in the car and made the Karen get to the back of the line by herself. Absolutely ridiculous, guys. So here's some backstory. My mother-in-law passed about 6 years ago from breast cancer. My father-in-law was left lonely and depressed, and he sat in his house for 5 years trying to pick up the pieces. A little over 2 years ago, my daughter had to have a heart transplant, and we lived in rural Minnesota. And as she was being put onto the list to receive her transplant from the U of M, my father-in-law asked us to move in so we wouldn't have to commute. He was on us every day for 3 months until we said yes. My daughter got her heart in October 2020, and he insisted we stay permanently because he forgot how much he loved having his grandkids in the house, and we agreed. So with that, fast forward to last year. My father-in-law approaches us in front of my kids and told us that he found someone and he was having a shotgun wedding, and that he wanted us to take over the mortgage on the house so he could buy his new wife a house of her dreams. We agreed happily, and we made a verbal commitment to a timeline to buy the house. And from that moment, I would take control of the property and all of its costs. He would sell it to me for what he owed on it. He also had no problem waiting a year to sell it to us so I could get my money affairs in order. With that, I did tell him how much the house was worth, and he could make a pretty penny if he sold it to someone else. That I would not be hurt, just tell us so we can make arrangements. He acted as if he was pissed off I would even mention that to him. Then he looked at my children, his grandchildren, dead in the face and said, "I would never kick you out. I will never sell it out from under us, and you don't have to worry." That as long as he was alive, that their grandmother's house was ours to buy. So fast forward to today. We called him last week and we told him we had an appointment with a realtor and that he should give them a call as well. We're finally ready to buy. Well, he comes by unannounced and he said that his wife had appraised it without his knowledge and she's no longer willing to sell it to us for what we originally agreed upon. He said to us that she found out what it's really worth and she wants the full list price, and that he needs to be more concerned with her wants and needs or she's leaving him. We told him that this was his idea, and not only is he going back on his word to his granddaughters, one who happens to be disabled, but his own daughter. I told him he's uprooting their lives and they're both in high school, and this is the first time in years that we have some sense of normalcy. I told him that if this is what he truly wants, we will move, but he needs to give us ample time. My wife just calls him out for being a coward to his greedy wife and said she had no right to sell this house. He just abruptly left saying, "No worries, no worries." And now for the kicker. I get back in the house extremely stressed out, and my wife said that before he left, he pulled her aside in earshot of my kids to ask her if she knew where to get any pain pills from. And I'm thinking, what the actual F? I found out that my wife did have to go down and sign what she thought was homesteading paperwork. I'm not clear about what was signed. I'm working out of town at the time. So Monday, I have to go to the courthouse and figure it out. Probably talk to a lawyer. This is completely out of the norm for my father-in-law. He's usually the mellow, level-headed guy that everyone trusts with their problems, and we all love him dearly. Update. So we've decided to move, unless he doesn't give us ample time to move. We're thinking September, so the kids can finish school so we can save for a decent down payment. It does suck because they're not going to be able to finish their academic career in their schools. They're both finally starting to get settled and have friends. Oh man guys, so a lot of people in the comments of this post are saying that the woman OP's father-in-law married knew exactly what she was doing and that she's nothing but a gold digger. Like threatening divorce if your new husband doesn't obey you because you're money hungry is red flags all over. And another red flag is the father-in-law having a sudden shotgun wedding. Yikes, guys. This person comments, "My thoughts are that Miss Gold Digger got dad hooked on pills, and her intent is to clean him out and move on to the next guy." And this person says, "This legitimately happened to my dad. Younger, attractive girl, got him hooked on pills and totally took advantage of him. Cost him a DUI. But luckily, that sobered him up enough to kick her and the pills to the curb. It took my mom, 2 uncles, and a cousin. Woof." One last comment. This person says, "It happened to a friend of mine's dad. Girlfriend was easily 20 years younger than him. Very conventionally attractive. She was skinny, had a boob job, had curves, nails, hair, eyelashes, the whole 9 yards. She loved to party and encouraged him to drink more and even do party drugs because I guess they help with hangover. She was always decked out in designer clothes, drove a nice sports car, had him bankroll her business idea, which eventually failed, and pay for very expensive dental work to make her teeth perfectly straight and white. Literally 2 days after her last appointment for her teeth, she left him. He was crushed. We all felt bad for him, but we didn't sympathize with him too much because, well, did he really expect anything else? She was clearly with him for the money, and she left as soon as she found a younger guy that could support her lifestyle. So this is why I never go to the city. My stove had poor ventilation and it finally broke. So to stop smoke from getting everywhere in my house, I had to make Hank Hill proud and buy propane. However, the propane in my town is ridiculously expensive. So I decide to drive 2 hours to the nearest city and buy me some much cheaper gas. The last bit of context is I have a huge scar on the left side of my face and no left ear. It still works, it just makes headphones a challenge. It's also very noticeable, but everyone in my town knows me, so I'm used to people being polite about it. So there I am, just looking around the store, when all of a sudden I hear, "Excuse me." I step closer to the shelf, thinking she just wants to get past. And I hear it again, "Excuse me." At that I say, "Oh, I'm sorry, am I in your way?" Karen says, "No, I just want to know what you think you're doing here." I say to her, I'm buying propane, though I did see a good hamburger sale, so plans change." Karen says to me, "That's not what I mean, and you know it." I say to her, "No, I don't think I do." She then says to me, "What are you doing here? People like you should not be allowed to leave the house. Look at you." I just reply, excuse me, have I done something wrong?" Karen says, "You scared my kid." I just look at her kid, and the kid did look uncomfortable. And I say, "I'm sorry, ma'am, She then interrupts me and says, "That's right. What makes you think that you can run around scaring innocent children? You need to cover your face up." At this point, I'm doing an impressive job controlling my anger. And I say, "I can't help it, ma'am." Someone had very strong opinions on how my face should look. And as you can see, they won the argument. Now, if you're done, I have more important things to do than to listen to a bitch whine at me for a made-up reason. And I do regret saying this. And that's when Karen loses it and says, "How dare you? I'm calling the police." I say to her, "For what? For hurting your feelings?" She says, "No, for verbal assault and public indecency." She then takes out her cell phone, dials a number, and I can hear her say, "Yes, I need you to send police. There's a violent and angry man at the local general store. He's yelling and scaring small children. Send someone right now." The police did come pretty quickly to talk to both of us, and then they looked at the cameras. Karen got a warning about wasting police time, and I got the guilt of failing my challenge of not getting mad. Guys, I'd say OP handled himself pretty well. And again, another instance where Karen could have taught her child that everyone's different and they still deserve respect. But instead, she yelled at OP, telling him to stay home because of his scar and missing ear. Well, Karen, maybe you should stay inside because we have enough idiots in stores nowadays. And this person shares their experience and says, "I'm a 17-year-old female and I was in a car accident when I was 13. It left me without an arm from the elbow down. I'm able to use the disabled parking spots in parking lots, and I do not have a prosthetic arm, so it's pretty effing obvious that my arm is just gone." Most people get onto a teenager for using the disabled spot because you're young, you folks don't need that. But hey, I'm using the effing spot, unless you're like in a wheelchair or something. So I park one day and get ready to go into Walmart when some Karen pulls up behind me, blocking the way in, and she lays on her horn. I get out thinking, what the F? And she speeds off when she sees my arm is gone. Later, while in the store, she bumps into me and she says something like, "You don't even need that spot, bitch. Your legs still work." I ignored her, but she intentionally starts shoving me before leaving the aisle, causing me to drop everything I was carrying. By the time I picked up my stuff and put it back in my basket, she was gone. Later, a kid who's like 10 or 11 runs up to me, and he goes, "My mom said that you need to cover up your stump because you make people uncomfortable." I then watch this kid walk up to the lady and she makes a smug face. I ask her what her deal is and she says, "You can walk. You shouldn't be stealing parking spots of a hard-working single mother. I have a kid who you're traumatizing with your disfigurement. You don't even look cool. You're either trying to scare the children or gain sympathy points, you bitch, and it's not working. Cover yourself." Well, I lost that battle, and I literally stormed off crying, and someone else starts yelling at her, telling her to F off. Later, when I was going to my car, her kid was drawing on the back of my windshield with a dry erase marker. And when I told him to stop, he ran to her car and they just sped off. The kid had drawn a certain body part and the word slut underneath. There's no real climax, but definitely an entitled Karen. and this also happened almost a year ago. The work of art that the kid made came right off when I took a wet wipe to it, and I don't know her license plate number. I was ready to go home and not drag things out further, so I didn't talk to the store about CCTV footage. But like I said, it's a very anticlimactic ending, but I haven't dealt with her since, so that's a win in my book. Yeah, people like that Karen are just nasty people, and it's terrible that OP had to go through that. I would have been like, Karen, I'm making you uncomfortable? Try having a piece of your effing arm missing. And I get it, some people may be uncomfortable being around people with disabilities, but how hard can it be to not confront, insult someone, and be rude about it? Like, just go about your day. So last night, my fiance left in the evening to give a friend's son a ride back to his home. She implied that she would be home before 9. She left around 7:45, and 10:15 rolls around and she wasn't home. I texted and she apologized to me, saying her friend's son was actually in the next town over, maybe 30 minutes away, and that she was coming home right now. 11:45 rolls around and she hadn't come home, so I called her to no answer. I texted her to no response, and I was getting very upset. 12:30 rolls around and still no response and no answer to my phone calls. I was extremely angry. That's when 1:30 comes around and my anger had completely transformed into worry. She wasn't answering my calls and the texts were not read. Around 1:45, that's when I called the police. I've always heard that the first 24 hours of someone being missing is the most important, so I didn't want to delay. I asked them to let me know if there's been any traffic accidents involving her, and the operator told me that they would put out the word and send some cops to check along the route. I called all the hospitals in the area to check if she's been checked in, and I waited outside watching the road for her car for 3 hours. Partially because I didn't want the kids to hear me on the phone with hospitals, and secondly because I was sick with worry. At around 7 a.m., she comes home. She apologized for being out, and she said she had no excuse. She told me she was driving home and she felt tired, like she was falling asleep at the wheel, so she pulled over to the side of the road to sleep. When she did that, she found that her brand new phone had stopped working. She says she napped anyways because that's the responsible thing to do, and she came home at 7 to bring the kids to school and to get to work on time. I immediately called the police and told them that she had come home safely, and gave them the case number and told them to stop searching, which they did. My fiance brought the kids to school and she left for work. That's when I get a call from a policeman asking where she worked. I told him and asked why, and I was informed that that's their policy, to check on the person's wellness after a missing person's found. I asked them to not go by her work, but to give her a call instead. He said he could not promise. My fiance is relatively new to her job, and a police officer showed up and asked to speak with her, and now she's enraged at me for calling the police and sending a cop to her work, making her look bad. She's saying that I overreacted and that she wasn't missing, and that I was punishing her for doing the responsible thing and not driving while drowsy. She's also saying that she's never going to leave the house again except to go to work, because she's afraid that I'm going to call the cops on her again. So did I overreact? Should I have waited 2 days like she suggests? Okay, so first of all, OP did the right thing because who knows, his fiance might have been in trouble. And secondly, I don't know if OP's fiance has like chronic fatigue or something going on, or anything health related, because that sounds like an awful long time to take a nap to regain focus and energy to drive. A drive that OP said is 30 minutes away. And a lot of people in the comments are not buying it, guys. This person says, no, her whole story is a big fat lie. She told you she would be home by 9, but somehow she was wrong about where the kid lived. Did she not know the town beforehand? Did she just start driving 30 minutes and then the kid goes, oh wait, I actually live here, not here. That part of the story does not even make any sense. So she ended up changing the time, and then she got tired and she pulled over and napped on the side of the road. You do realize that if police were looking for her on the roads where she claimed she would be napping in her car on said road, and they would have found her, right? And this person comments, she's a terrible liar. If I was going to cheat, I would have figured out a much better story. She must be at the I don't give a crap stage of their relationship. Poor guy. So yeah, with that said, guys, she also told OP to not call the cops unless she goes missing for 2 whole days. Like, is she planning something in the future? Guys, let me know what you think. And that, my friends, is r/entitled people. If you guys enjoyed the stories today, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. It's another Entitled People episode, where Karens are going crazy and getting arrested. So yeah, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.